Welcome back, America. John Spencer is one of a handful of people, when they talk about war and they talk about what's going on between Israel and the terrorists, actually know what the hell they're talking about. He's chair of urban warfare studies at the Modern War Institute of West Point. He's co-director of the Urban Warfare Project, host of the Urban Warfare Project podcast. And what's going on in Gaza, sir, is urban warfare. The Israelis are under attack by the Biden administration. They're under attack by the European Union. They're under attack by the United Nations. They're under attack by the world media, including the New York Times, CNN, the American media. Is Israel really conducting a war against citizens?
Absolutely not. There could be nothing further from the truth. It seems to be the great lie that the world has fallen into disinformation, either for intentional reasons or ignorance. By every measure, the Israeli Defense Forces are facing what no military has faced in modern history, if not going back to any history, especially the United States military, who've only faced even a small portion of this type of a challenge, of an enemy combatant embedded underneath urban areas on purpose, a massive military. If anybody thinks it would go differently if it wasn't the IDF, they're actually right. It would be much more destructive. I haven't written that yet, but what do you think the United States would do if somebody invaded, and that's what October 7th was? Raped, murdered, burned children, took hostages back into enemy territory, and then started raining down rockets on our cities? I can guarantee you the U.S. military would respond with overwhelming force. And that's the problem, is that people believe there's a different way. And I've actually been on the ground in Gaza, deep in Gaza, with the IDF, because not only have I been studying this type of combat, urban warfare, but I've also been studying the IDF, how they're organized, how they fight, and gone into Gaza, unlike most of the people who have an opinion, and that's what it is, an opinion about the war, haven't been. And I'm saying that the IDF are conducting the most just war, justly, of any military in history, given the context of the challenge of urban combat, in the way they approach the battle, and how they have done everything that has ever done in the history of war to limit civilian casualties, because there is no such thing as a bloodless war. But the IDF have done everything that everybody's ever thought about, and then created new ones that nobody's done. They waited for weeks, 3 weeks, before they entered the cities, until they conducted the ground invasion, while their citizens, to include American citizens, are literally being raped by their captors, the terrorist captors, inside the cities. They waited, they evacuated 85 to 90% of the civilians, and then went after Hamas, who was hiding underneath hospitals, underneath schools, underneath UN facilities. And then the world said, well, it's still not good enough. You're still causing too much harm. And then, so they changed their tactics. And every time, whatever the world sees, they think they know what they're seeing. And most people are ignorant to war, or they've fallen into Hamas's trap. Literally, Hamas's strategy is what is happening now, for the entire world to turn against Israel, to the entire world to think that it could be done in a different way. And the world, and I mean the world's, expectation that Israel should not go into Gaza, and they should let their hostages be raped and tortured and killed, and rockets can continue to rain down. This is the major problem, is that most of the militaries, most of the governments of the world, besides a few, haven't faced an existential threat in a long, long time. And unfortunately, Israel has had to face it very repeatedly. And they've often had to stand alone. And they'll do it if they have to, because everybody has the right of self-defense. And that's what I'm seeing on the ground.
You have this case a few days back where the Israelis accidentally hit this caravan of food relief people. I went through in the opening some of the instances where the United States military did the same thing, and I don't blame them. They're not aiming for them. I mean, we're a righteous country. The Israelis are a righteous people. That's a righteous country. And then yet this administration exploits it, attacks them, blames them for the lack of food coming into Gaza, blames them for civilian casualties. Last week, they continued to use Hamas numbers, despite the fact the greatest statisticians in the world have said, no, that's not accurate. What do you make of the propaganda from the Biden administration and Blinken and, frankly, our media? Isn't that basically giving aid and comfort to the enemy to continue to do what they're doing?
Absolutely. It is causing the suffering. Literally, our position, especially mass media's position on the war, is causing the suffering, because the Hamas strategy is relying on hope that these messages will continue to be a daily feed in everybody's minds, and that basically the dangerously dumb will believe everything they hear versus actually what is going on. And then Hamas continues to hold on to hope that they will survive. That's all they have to do, is survive the war, and they achieve victory and become the great champions of the terrorist world who attacked Israel and the United States, since they call Israel the little Satan, they call America the great Satan. But 100% it's giving Hamas hope. And the truth of the matter is that not only is there no evidence of a single war crime or a single intent, and that's what really matters in this sham of a ICJ genocide case, to use the word created just to try to explain the horrors that happened in the Holocaust. The sham of that is to show that there is intent. And just like that tragic event with the World Kitchen, is that there is no intent to target civilians, and there is no evidence that Israel has targeted a single civilian. War is hell. War is uncertain. There's a fog and a friction, and mistakes have happened.
We'll be right back. Welcome back, America. We're here with John Spencer, Chair of Urban Warfare Studies at the Modern War Institute of West Point, Coordinator, Urban Warfare Project, host of the Urban Warfare Project podcast. You probably never heard of him on CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, and the Washington Post, because he's an actual expert. He's not just shooting from the hip. So, John Spencer, can you give us a few examples? What is the IDF doing to avoid civilian casualties?
I mean, it's a long list, Mark, but they evacuated all the urban areas. They dropped flyers. They sent drones with speakers. They handed out their maps and told the civilians where not to be, and which includes Hamas. They use cell phone presence in areas to know if there are civilians in an area, and they're telegraphing every punch and giving away all their military advantage in the pursuit to preserve civilian life and to mitigate civilian harm. It is incredible. I fought in urban combat. The U.S. military has never done things like that, handed out their maps, told the enemy exactly where they're going to be on a day-to-day basis. They do daily pauses, Mark, every day almost. They do daily pauses and says, for these number of hours, we will not conduct operations so civilians can leave, so humanitarian aid can get in. It's incredible.
And Hamas is doing everything humanly possible to have civilians killed, to create damage on buildings. That last so-called hospital was really a Hamas compound, and they were firing mortar shells into their own hospital because they knew all the photographers from the BBC and AP and Reuters and the rest, and all the mouthpieces in our media would say, oh my God, look what the Israelis are doing, so forth and so on. You look at this massive propaganda effort, there's enough factual information getting to the White House for sure, the State Department, and the media outlets to know better that they're relying on terrorist regimes and they're treating Israel like it's a terrorist regime. What do you make of that?
I mean, it's a wacky world when we're believing the word of a terrorist over our allies, our friends, over a moral, just government and military. But it's the speed of it's incredible. Just like that hospital, they're just waiting for the IDF to complete their operation where 0 civilians were killed and 200 terrorists were killed. They were just waiting for the IDF to leave to get those photos of the damage that was caused by the combatant fighting from a hospital, which is a war crime.
The other thing that amazes me, John Spencer, is the lack of, they talk about moral equivalency. Joe Biden and his party and his regime have trashed the Prime Minister of Israel over and over and over again. They want him to be toppled. Schumer said that. It's a duly elected government. They don't talk about the mass terrorist who runs Iran that way. They don't even mention the names of the leaders of Hamas or Hezbollah or the Houthis. They get a complete pass. So Netanyahu's the enemy. And Bernie Sanders, of course, we know who he is. He says it's Netanyahu's war. They all sound like Rashida Tlaib now. I mean, even a man like you, with all your background, all your experience, a historian among other things, you have to be shocked by this too, are you not?
I am shocked by people playing politics with people's lives. I've been on the ground. I've walked the ground of October 7th. I mean, Hamas are psychotic killers that need to be killed. And the world will be a better place. And actually, by all the politics of this, by making it go slower, we cause more suffering. But I 100% agree, and it's not Netanyahu's war. Israel is actually united, unlike we are, to the threat to their lives, and they're doing something about it, and they're having immense success. The victory, according to their words, is close. And as a military strategist, I believe that. As I have been on the ground, Hamas is on the ropes, and they're hoping that the U.S. saves them.
And Biden wants to save them. Biden keeps demanding a ceasefire. He doesn't want them to go into Rafah. That's where the leadership is. That's where they're hauled out. That's where the final battalions are. The Israelis want to wrap it up. They want to take them out. They want to eliminate Hamas from the Gaza Strip. And we have these people in this country, in this administration, who claim that's what they want. But it's clearly not what they want. I actually think they're servicing Iran. I actually think that's what's going on, because Iran is the mothership of terrorism. They never mention them. They're sending billions into them. They've rearmed themselves. We don't attack them even when they kill 3 American service personnel. John Spencer, please keep up the good work. You're one of only a handful of experts who's out there telling the truth. God bless you, my friend.
Thank you.